Hi, you're with Peter Carr and Scott Stewart on LTV's The Research Channel. So on our episode this morning we're going to be talking about TCS, or Tata Consultancy Services. Tata is an Indian services company. You may or may not know that it's actually been in Australia for close to 10 years now, and is part of one of those Indian services companies that we would typically put in the same category as a Satyam or an Infosys. Mm-hmm. Scott recently attended a briefing in Sydney for the day. So Scott, what were the highlights of the briefing?
Yeah, very interesting. I didn't know a lot about TCS or Tata before the briefing, and they actually hadn't really engaged with a lot of our analysts in Australia, so they've been very quiet, but they have 5,000 people supporting the Australian effort. Right. So quite interesting. Obviously we know that they're the largest employer group or organisation in India. Yep. Across 7 sectors, 80 countries, 400,000 staff.
They've actually got 100,000 of those just in the ICT parts of their business.
Right. Yeah, actually I think it might be even closer to 200 now. They have a revenue of 67 billion. Interesting as well that 65% of the Tata Holdings is a charitable trust. Right. So very generous in that respect in their charitable giving. In fact, far greater than a lot of other organisations. So.
Yeah, well, India is a massive economy, and we don't often appreciate that. From this part of the planet, but 4th largest economy in the world. I mean, this is a country that has over 5,000 daily newspapers, right? There's a serious base of people, there's a serious economy there. And the thing about the Indian economy is, regardless of things like the global financial crisis, when economic events like that happen, they can basically turn inwards and be fully supported by their own population base and their own business base through those periods. And as a result, I think their GDP over the last 5 or 6 years has averaged north of 6%, which is really quite significant.
That's interesting because I think the figure is roughly about 90% of their new business revenue comes from existing clients. Mm-hmm. And I found that was unusual, but also a good thing in relation to the fact that their clients trust them, and they very much go on that sort of trust and integrity.
But would you say it's unusual? I mean, to me, that actually makes perfect sense, because I would suggest that their approach to market is very much a land and expand method, where they come in and they do a parcel of work and probably do it particularly well, and the client then says, okay, do a little bit more and do a little bit more. And I think that's certainly been the case with their experience with an organisation like Qantas, for example.
Yeah, maybe unusual is the wrong sort of choice of word there. I think what I was trying to say is that as an analyst, if you have a client sort of coming to you and saying, oh, what about TCS, as a new client, knowing that they're sort of so focused on their existing client base, I think that's the sort of what I was trying to get my head around.
Yeah, sure.
Is versus sort of going, doing one client, stitching them up, doing the solution, then moving on to the next client. So they're very, very much building a strong reputation and credibility base with their existing clients.
So what's the story then with Tata over the next couple of years? Because from a local perspective, from an Australian ICT services market perspective, the Indian services companies collectively represent, roughly only about 3.5% of the overall revenue in that market. So they've been here for a while, they're getting established, but they're still a relatively small piece of the pie. So what are the plans?
The plans are in two regards. One, I focused during the briefing on the banking side of things. So they have some very big credentials in banking. In fact, they've won the Deutsche Bank banking system provision agreement. So basically,
from a global perspective.
Global. So that's everything outside of Germany. They provide the banking systems to their branch network. They have the Bank of China, the State Bank of India, and ING. And obviously we know that they also have some of the banks in Australia. Mm-hmm. So I think that banking is the area that they are very strong at and that they're very focused on. They mentioned that in 2009 they had 38 bank go-lives. They also have the largest Islamic bank running on one instance, and they also have one of the biggest private bank clouds with 5,000 branches running off it, all different banks, all using the same private bank cloud, and I don't think many people know about that.
That's really significant, and I guess that seems very plausible given all the attention that's been ploughed into core banking platforms over the last couple of years. And I think to your point about them liking to stick around with the existing customers, then there's obviously some strong areas for growth then as the banks look outside of those core banking areas.
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we're talking about a lot of those banks over there that they're targeting haven't got any banking systems at all. So basically, we're talking third world, in relation to some banking. So they're basically able to go in and completely modernise and put systems in place in a very, very short period of time. And the innovation is quite incredible. So they're describing that you can go into a bank in India and apply for a bank account and walk out 3 minutes later with your ATM card completely embossed and ready to go.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. It's like real-time customer provisioning, really, isn't it?
And the other innovation they have is what they call bank on a bicycle. So they have basically bankers going out on bicycles out into the regions. There's a cash box mounted on the back, and on the front there's a complete, I guess you'd call it an FPOS, arrangement, terminal, dashboard, where basically they go out and do basically banking for people out in the regional areas.
It gives a whole new meaning to mobile banking, huh? Look, I don't think something like a mobile banker on a bicycle is ever going to pick up in Australia, and I think for enterprise Australian customers, it's very interesting to know they have strong credentials in the application development and maintenance space.
Yes.
And we've kind of known that for a while. They've obviously got strong credentials in financial services, so the two of those together go very well. Is there anything else we should consider?
There's a couple of things. One is that they have a cloud platform they call ION, and it's basically a low-cost virtualized desktop. So it's the desktop as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service offering.
Delivered publicly.
Delivered publicly. And that's rolling out very fast across India. And that's, again, businesses who don't have a level of IT computing at the moment, and they're basically coming on board and straight away becoming computerized. So
that's based out of their own data centers. Yep. In India.
That's right. So they are looking at that for Australia. They're looking at that for the very low end of the small business market. Mm-hmm. And I think that they have the economies of scale, they have the funding, they have the reserves, they have the R&D, they have the innovation, and they build something and then go out to the market versus having the customers capitalise and build it up for them.
Yeah, this is really interesting because one of the biggest challenges the Indians have faced over the last couple of years is this whole backlash against offshoring.
Yes.
This kind of work. But as you say, a significant presence in Australia, 5,000 people, which is bigger than most of the large Australian IT service providers. The other thing is that we know some of their competitors are also actually providing some of these virtual desktop solutions to some of the big four banks.
Yes.
So I think the whole concept of offshoring backlash is probably now we're moving well beyond that. So potentially other large organisations shouldn't shy away from the fact that just because they are hosting things out of India or just because they're an Indian firm doesn't mean they're serious about servicing Australian customers.
Absolutely, and they do things so well. They have a complete bank over there, which is a demonstration pilot site. So it's 16,000 square feet of a state-of-the-art modern bank branch. And they're flying bankers over there from Australia, from all Asia Pacific and the US, and they're showing them what they can basically deliver in any country in the world. State-of-the-art devices, you walk in, they've got a call centre, they've got transactions, they've got the complete working branch with all the back-end systems. And they do it from one end to the other, right from the back office right through to the front office and the devices and everything. It's quite incredible the way they do it.
Really bringing that technology experience to the fore. So is there any one thing to leave us with today?
I think look out for them. I think they're almost like a quiet achiever, to coin that phrase. And they are moving into areas of business transformation. They're moving into areas of delivery excellence and thought leadership. And they're absolutely investing billions of dollars in R&D and innovation. So I really think you have to take them very seriously, and we have to watch out for TCS.
Great.